So, talking to Father Arrupe one day, he said to me, the Holy Father is going to visit the Germanicum. The Germanicum was a residence for seminarians in Rome. It was the Hungarian Germanicum, where in the beginnings, and that goes back to Ignatius's times in the 1500s, students from Hungary and Germany would live in this place, and then they would take their classes at the Gregorian University and other universities. So Father Arrupe says to me, the Holy Father's coming, that we called it the Germanicum. He's coming to visit the Germanicum, and our rule is that when the Pope visits one of our institutions in Rome, the general goes there. You are the acting general, you go there. Oh, I said, I don't like the idea of that. I said, no, you go. So comes the day, and I get the German assistant. We have a regional assistant for Germany, and a very wonderful man. So we go to the Germanicum in Rome, and we're inside waiting with the rest of the group. There's a whole group there. Pope comes. When the Pope came in the door and saw us, he was stunned. He didn't expect to see us there. He thought he had taken care of this, taken care of us. So he celebrated Mass, and then the big feature of the day was a talk to the seminarians. These are Germans. These are seminarians from all over Germany, mostly Germany, some parts of Hungary, and the rector was a Jesuit, a young German Jesuit, and the Pope had agreed to give a talk. He had agreed to give a talk, which had to be postponed when he was shot. So there's this whole group of German students, a huge crowd of them in this hall, and then there was a set of chairs all down the end there on the one side, plastic bottom chairs. I emphasize it, plastic bottoms. They were of the dignitaries. The first one was Cardinal Schaeper, who was the prefect of the Sacred Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. And he was an alumnus of the Germanicum. So he's in the first spot, and I'm the last spot. I'm the last seat in that distinguished row. So when we start, the Pope is sitting at the main table with the German rector and a couple of other people, and then the seminarians are all out here, and I'm in this row out here. And when the German rector introduces the Pope, he says, you'll be happy to know that the Holy Father has agreed to accept questions. Well, the Holy Father gave him a look. Oh, that was the first time the Holy Father heard of that. He wasn't too keen on it. So the rector was a little shaken, and to sort of gain ground, he said, Holy Father, you'll be happy to know that there has never been even the suspicion of a heresy in this Germanicum. And at that, Schaeper, the prefect of the congregation, slid off his chair and fell on the floor. He sat right down on the floor. Well, the students you could hear them in Naples. They were going away, and others were laughing, and the Pope was not laughing at all. Well, I was one of the youngest guys there, so I went up to help the poor man. He couldn't get up, so I helped him back into his seat, and the seats were slippery, so it was quite a scene, and the poor man thanked me. So we get through it, and afterwards the Pope comes over then to this row of distinguished guests, and he's meeting each one, and I'm the last one online. So when he meets me, what I'm trying to say to him, this had all been in German. When he meets me, I'm trying to tell him, Father Arrupe is asking for you, and I want to tell you about his condition, and I want to get some information out of him. Why did he? Why did he change? Why, And he said to me, you speak German? We've been speaking. Well, I said, yeah. He said, how, you Americans don't speak German. How do you speak German? Well, I said, I lived here in Europe, and I lived in Germany, and I studied in Germany, and I did my tertianship in Germany. So I said, now, Father, no, but the Americans don't speak German. And, well, I didn't get it. That was it. Then his aides came and, I wanted to get so much out of him, but I couldn't get in, and he wasn't. So I never did get a chance, to really speak to him. I wrote to him several times. He never answered. What we had to do, Father Dedza had to get reports and put them together, and then report to the Pope in September. And it would be decided whether we could have the general congregation. So at that meeting in September, Father Dedzer went over to the Vatican, and the Pope, of course, was there. And he had some other people there, the Pope, one of whom was a German Benedictine by the name of Meyer, who had been the secretary of the Congregation for Religious. We had real problems with him. And at that meeting with the Pope to determine whether we would have our congregation, and Father Dedzer was there, Meyer said we were not ready for the congregation. We should not be permitted to hold the general congregation because Jesuits and even and especially provincials were saying that the Pope's talk of February 27th was an apology to the society. He was saying that this had all been a misunderstanding and now the society is great and everything is fine. And he said, that's not true, and so they should not be allowed to have a general congregation. Well, so the Pope listened, and he said, Father Dedzer, do you think you're ready for a congregation? Father said, si. So, he said, I won't stand in the way of it. That was what the Pope said. I won't object to it. So we had our congregation. But it was interesting what we had to go through in order to get it. Here we are now at the beginning of the congregation. The opening days of September, we had this Mass with the Holy Father he came over to our Jesuit residence, the Curia, and gave another fine homily. And Father Dedzer, Father Arrupe was there in a wheelchair, and of course Dedzer and Pitao were there. No, it was just a wonderful thing. It was an interesting thing because this was in the morning, the Mass, and the Pope had come over for it. So he stayed and he had breakfast, and he was in a wonderful mood, John Paul II. And so he received all the Jesuits, assistancy by assistancy. And so you had the regional assistant for each assistancy introducing people to the Pope. And he was really in a good mood. So, for example, he's sitting there and looking, and Father Jerry Sheehan, most of you remember, he was our regional assistant. He was introducing all of us, saying, this is Father. So, Joe O'Hare, who at that time was the editor of America magazine, he was a delegate to the congregation. He was there. So Jerry Sheehan says, this is Father O'Hare. He's the editor of a journal of opinion. And JP2 says, whose opinion? And O'Hare said, your opinion. Good opinion. It was really give and take, and it was delightful. And then Jim Connor, some of you remember, know Jim Connor. He's introduced by Jerry Sheehan, and he says to the Pope, Father Connor is from Woodstock, and the Pope went, oh, he said, not that Woodstock. Oh, but there was this byplay, And when he came to me, Sheehan said, I think you know this man. Pope said, I remember you. I said, I remember you too. So that was our whole dialogue.